In Britain, we're supposed to enjoy free speech and the right to congregate. Of course, there are well-known limits to those rights, centred around hate speech, property damage, and violence. But Home Secretary James cleverly thinks there should be another restriction, namely, protesters shouldn't be allowed to repeat themselves. This is from The Times. According to Cleverly, pro-Palestinian demonstrators have made their point and so should end their protests now. Here's what Cleverly told The Times. It is putting a huge amount of pressure onto UK policing, not just the Metropolitan Police, but also other police forces. And the question I ask myself is, what are these protests genuinely hoping to achieve? They have made a point and they've made it very, very loudly. And I'm not sure that these marches every couple of weeks add value to the argument. They're not really saying anything new. This is outrageous, right? When this argument is made, you say, okay, if you're finding the demonstrations repetitive, maybe put some pressure on Israel so that they actually stop the genocidal war. It's not just an opinion that people are putting forward. Oh, yes, we're against the genocidal war. Now we've made our point, right? People are coming out onto the streets every weekend or every other weekend because they genuinely care about this and they're trying to prove their commitment. And I think politicians should wake up and think, if this many people are this committed to this, maybe they've got a point, right? And instead he's saying, we get it, stay at home now, stay at home. It's like, people will stay at home when you do something, anything, to stop the genocidal war that they are protesting, because it is still going on. The Home Affairs Committee recently reported that more than £25 million was spent on policing pro-Palestinian protests between October the 7th and December the 17th. And the Met say policing the marches is draining funds from other aspects of policing. And there have been now suggestions to make marches more difficult to organise. So the government is proposing to change the rules in terms of what makes them legal. At the moment, organisers must give the police 6 days' notice of a planned protest. But Policing Minister Chris Philp has now said that may be extended to a fortnight. So you will need to give more advance warning before having a protest. Dalia, I mean, I've seen lots of people say this, the number of people going on these demos every other weekend, they have been extraordinarily peaceful, right? Extraordinarily peaceful. I read somewhere there's been maybe 600 arrests, but if you think there's, millions of people probably by now, so if you count people going multiple times, right? There've been so many people taking to the streets, and these have been incredibly peaceful marches. I have to say, the ones I've been on, and I went on that one that was the biggest one, it's probably the biggest march I've been on since Iraq. I mean, definitely the biggest march I've been on since Iraq. It was so peaceful. I was just basically surrounded by lots of Muslim families, who'd been organized by their mosque. And it was a real, felt like everyone really doing their sort of civic responsibility in a way, like not remotely confrontational at all. And this is being, now castigated as either sort of boring, now we get it, or as a threat by extremists that make London impossible to go to for certain ethnic minorities. I mean, how do you possibly respond to this?
I mean, it's just patently absurd. And I think it's, what's so funny to me about it is that James Cleverly is unwittingly touching on something that I think a lot of people are feeling right now, which is that ultimately you can pull at every democratic lever that you have. You can call your MP, you can write to your MP, you can do boycotts, you can march every week, you can do all these different things. You can respond in polls. 71% of Brits have said that they believe that there probably or definitely should be a ceasefire. You can do everything to express to your government that the majority of people do not consent to their current actions and want a change of course. And yet the ruling parties will turn around and just say nothing, essentially, and will not only refuse to change course, but will actually double down in doing exactly what it is that people are, don't want them to do. And it's just, I think a lot of people are learning a really hard lesson about the way in which where democracy stands right now, because it's it just goes, what James Cleverly is saying is like, yeah, we get the message. We get what you're saying. We get what you want. And we're just not doing anything about it. So can you just stop, because it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of our time. Like, it doesn't really restore a huge amount of faith in the democratic processes in this country. And so not only does it demonstrate James Cleverly's, contempt for democracy and contempt for the way that people in this country feel about this issue. And I also think him and a lot of other people are probably really confused. I think they thought they had succeeded in making solidarity with Palestine a marginal issue, or an issue that most people don't really care about, or even an issue that people is very stigmatized. And yet it's clear that hasn't worked, because I have never seen, since probably anti-apartheid, I mean, obviously I wasn't alive at the time, but I can't think of any other cause since the anti-apartheid protests against South Africa, and the anti-apartheid movement against South Africa, something that has so consistently mobilized over a really long period of time such a huge segment of the population. And I think, they're probably super confused. They're probably like, why do so many people seem to really care about this part of the world that is far away, that, we've put so much work into stigmatizing, that we've put so much work into making people feel afraid to speak up on. And yet that human spirit is kind of enduring. And so I can imagine that it's incredibly frustrating to see that kind of state practice has not worked. So it really does speak to that contempt for democracy, but it also speaks to this extremely immature way of understanding politics. It just goes to show that, for this certain class of people, politics is really just about parlor games, exchanging of speech acts, exchanging opinions, and then going home and not thinking about it anymore. Whereas for the rest of us, politics, and particularly politics when it comes to a genocide, is so deeply tied to a material reality and our deep sense of who we are. And so it's not just the kind of thing that we, turn up, say our opinions, exchange a few words, and then go home and stop thinking about. And I think that that's really where the disconnect between the James Cleverleys of the world and actually the rest of the people in this country, so many people in this country who are like, this isn't just about me getting my voice heard. This isn't just about me expressing an opinion. This is about me trying to mobilize to change something, because I am acutely aware that thousands of lives are on the line here, and that moves me in a deep way. But that sense of being staked in politics for that kind of reason is clearly very alien to someone like James Cleverly.